I'm pulling my weight in gold. Proud me anxious, call me broke, but I can't live this on my own.
Welcome back to Ergo, everybody. I'm your host, Brandon, here in Ohio. And I know that James Comey testified on Thursday, and you're probably expecting me to report on that on this episode, but unfortunately that isn't the topic of today's episode. I'm going to hold that testimony report off for next week's episode because I am certain that there will be more drama, more information, and more news to fall regarding Donald Trump, because he just can't help himself. He just loves to stay in the news. So in order to give you a very complete and accurate report, I'm going to hold off on that for next week. However, in today's episode, we're going to be moving forward, setting our eyes into the future, and touching more on what is one of my personal goals, which is setting the stage for the importance of the midterm 2018 elections. Now, definitively, midterm elections are elections that happen in the middle of a current presidential term. However, the House of Representatives are always up for re-election every 2 years. All 435 seats are up for re-election. Now, the Senate plays by different rules because their terms are 6 years. So each year there is a various amount of Senate seats that are up for re-election or up for election. So, why is this important? It is important because everyone needs to identify with which way they want the country to go, because as polarized as we are as a nation, it's critical that the right side win, so to speak. So, for example, if you are in favor of having Obamacare, the ACA, instead of the American Health Care Act, you might want to make sure that the Republicans lose the majority in 2018. If you want to have an increased minimum wage, maybe $15 per hour like the Democrats have proposed, then you will want to make sure that the Democrats win the majority next year. If you want a true and independent investigation into how Russia hacked our election, you might want to make sure the Democrats take the majority next year. However, if you are unopposed to 23 million people being cut from their health care, tax cuts for the wealthiest and for the corporations of America, and if you're absolutely fine with the corruption and complete chaos of the White House and the federal government as a whole, then please, by all means, make sure that the Republican Party remains the majority. It is important to really indicate and drive home the fact that midterm elections for Congress are, in my opinion, more important than the presidential election. And that is because I agree with my grandmother when she says that the president is nothing more than just a puppet. She doesn't mean that just for Donald Trump, she means that for all presidents. And she makes that argument on the fact that Congress writes the laws, Congress votes on the laws, Congress has everything to do with legislation that pertains to our everyday lives. That is not to discredit the presidency, which has a lot of different duties and has a lot of different powers. However, Congress is who ultimately approves or disapproves pretty much anything that a president can or cannot do. So it is critical to make sure that the party that you identify with makes it to be the majority and make sure that they are the winning candidate. I think I've made it very clear already and on previous episodes who I'm rooting for and who I'm going to make sure I give every fiber of my being to making sure that they take the majority for 2018. But however, I'm not the only one that matters. This is the People's Show. This is the People's Platform. I'm doing this for the people. So let's see how the people feel about Congress and what their attitude is toward Congress going into the 2018 midterm elections. We're going to use a YouGov poll because I'm obsessed with poll numbers. I'm obsessed with how the Americans nationally feel about different issues because it kind of gives me a mindset on how things are going and how things are perceived. And I compare it to how I feel. And I implore you to do the same. So, the first question is that I took, there was 175 questions in this this poll. However, I took a few out that pertain to this subject. The first question is do you approve or disapprove of the way Congress is handling its job? 13% of Americans approve and 56% disapprove. The view of the likelihood that Democrats will obtain the majority of the Senate next year in 2018. 42% of Americans find it likely that that will happen, while 37% find it unlikely to happen. The likelihood that Democrats will obtain the majority of the House of Representatives in 2018, which is the one where all 435 seats are open and available. 41% say that it is likely, and 36% say that it is unlikely. Who does America feel is the most trusted party on health care? 39% say Democrats, and 28% say Republican. A really good question is, if a U.S. congressional election was being held today in the district that you live, who would you vote for? 41% of Americans say that they will vote Democrat. 37% say that they will vote Republican. The favorability of Democrats in Congress. 35% of Americans have a favorable view of Democrats, and 48%, shockingly, have a disapproval or unfavorable view of Democrats. The favorability of Republicans, however, gets no better, in that America has a 28% favorable view of them and 56% unfavorable view. And that is the Democrats and Republicans currently serving in Congress, okay? So no matter which side of the political spectrum or which side of the aisle you sit on, liberal, conservative, Republican, Democrat, independent, those numbers are bleak. They're disconcerting. I would be concerned if I was an elected official and I saw that America viewed us in those positions so lowly and so poorly. I would be working each and every day to make things better so that I would have more of the public confidence. But maybe that makes too much sense. To be fair though, the American voters, all of us are guilty of the fact that we are only going to vote in ways that directly affects us. The deeper question is has the elected officials, the representatives, sent there to represent large numbers of us, being in districts, being for the country, have they taken that same selfish attitude and mindset? That's a very deep question, because it seems that with the American Health Care Act and these proposed tax cuts, that is the attitude that the government is going in, and what can directly line their pockets and make the pot better. I don't know, you be the judge. However, after the break, I have a great interview with a man named Tom Prigg. He is a congressional candidate running for the 12th District in Pennsylvania, and he is a progressive candidate. So, you already know I'm in his corner. I'll see you after the break. Ergo wants to be the platform for you to express your political thoughts. Please feel free to join the discussion via phone, video, or in person. To set up an interview, contact The Ergo Show at outlook.com. Hey, Tom, how are you?
Good, how are you doing?
Excellent, excellent. Nice to meet you. I'm Brandon, obviously. All right. Thank you for taking the time out to be interviewed. I really, like I said, I can't thank you enough for it. So I just wanted to start by having you tell us a little bit about you and why you decided to run for Congress.
Okay, so I've been where should I start? I've been a neuroscientist for 20 years. I've been doing brain research. I work currently at Carnegie Mellon University. I switched over from Pitt. I worked at Pitt for 17 years. I know that doesn't add math, and there was a couple year period between grants. The I'm a military veteran. I was with the 82nd Airborne. I was stationed in Panama on the 1st of the 508. This is way back in 88, 92, like back when the drug wars were going on in Panama, where we did patrols and stuff like that. Pablo Escobar is pretty popular now because of the Netflix show,
Right.
stuff like that. I believe he's assassinated in 92, back when I got out. So why did I get into politics? I got into politics, it's kind of like a long story. I'll make it very quick. I grew up in Washington, Pennsylvania, and Washington County, Pennsylvania is a very poor area to begin with. It's rural. And I grew up in pretty abject poverty. A lot of times my only meal was a school meal. When I got into the military, I was 130 pounds. I gained 20 pounds in my first year of the military because I only had 3 meals a day. I did odd jobs. I started cutting grass when I was 9. Anything for a little bit of money. I got pizza and played a couple video games, baling hay, stuff like that. Anything I could do. And what's funny is, like, a lot of people grew up with me. Even I don't even think my best friend knew how poor I was, to be honest, because of that. So I always had this thing in the back of my brain about people who are exploited, because when I grew up, it was the 80s. And in the 80s, in the Reagan era, this is when the Republicans, this is before the moral majority, because they don't come into play until the 89, they took up this, what did they call it? It was the welfare mom, or was they came up with this campaign strategy that they would make up that what is hurting the national economy are these people who have dozens and dozens of kids, hundreds of kids, apparently, that are sucking away the national thing. And it's the poor people, and it's these mentally ill people. And what they started doing is shutting down state and federal hospitals, taking away stuff like that. And what they did is they demonized the poor. Well, I was poor. That never left me. I got out in the military to kind of escape poverty, and it didn't really come back until 2010 when the market crashed. And what we did was we bailed out the banks, not the people. Occupy Wall Street happened. I went out taking photographs, interviewing, and I saw that people didn't care. Majority of the people didn't care. There was a huge social movement. And so I started writing and stuff, and writing on social issues. And people don't want to read about that. They don't want to read about things that make them sad.
Right.
You know, they don't want to read about things that, like, the way the world is. They want to believe the world is nice and fluffy. And it occurred to me, no protest, no nothing can affect the government for the American people, except for one day, and that's election day. I was like, but my vote doesn't count.
Right.
Big money is against me. Advertising is against me. Everything is against me. My vote doesn't count. And I got this idea about 4 years ago. If I want to make change, I have to become one of the people who write the laws, who are the change. And that's where I started this idea. I know that was a really long answer and stuff like that.
No, that's a good answer. I was going to ask you, first and foremost, you know, because we have a lot of increasing political polarity and all that tension going on. Would you describe yourself as left, right, or center? And what would your priorities or platform points be for your campaign? Since obviously I'm in Ohio and you're in Pennsylvania.
Take this as a compliment. You're such a journalist. Every journalist asks me that. Along the political spectrum, I don't have an answer for you. And I'm not trying to be facetious. It honestly, if you look at my economic stance, it's moderate, right? I want to build small businesses. I want to education for more skilled labor, which is really important because in 2030, this is the Bureau of Labor Statistics saying we're going to lose 40% of the jobs we have.
Wow.
Forget what we have now. Forget our economy. Forget everything now, 40% of the jobs that exist will be lost to automation. And people say, really? Like, can that be possible? Think about the Google car alone. The Google car, right, in 13 years will be on the road. What does that mean for business? Well, it can drive 24/7, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's tractor trailers. That's local shipping. That's taxis. That's buses. You know, you can see the Truckers Association of America says it's 5.4 million jobs. That's just one aspect. What we need is higher skilled labor to make up for this new thing. So what am I going to do? My stance is kind of moderate. We got to worry about job training. We got to worry about small businesses. I got a small business rescue grant I talk about on the website. A grant instead of a loan, so that if it still fails, you don't go deeper in debt. I'm about bringing in new industries, sliding subsidies based on the more economically depressed an area is, the more federal subsidies you'll get for your small businesses. I want to rip the subsidies from profitable corporations like Exxon.
Mm-hmm.
They do not need them. They do not deserve them.
No.
Who deserves it are people who are doing startups, who are starting small businesses, who have good ideas. America needs innovation again. We need to put our good minds into the economy, and you do that by helping them out. And people say, well, that's government getting into small business. That's encroachment. You know, the very first U.S. Treasury was Alexander Hamilton. Guess who came up with subsidies? Alexander Hamilton. It's called Hamiltonian economics. You can't tell me that this is wrong or infringement, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can't tell me that that's an infringement in government getting into business and socialism when you allow it to happen to Exxon, BP, and all these other corporations. Why is it okay for them to get billions and billions of dollars? 75% of subsidies only go to 1,000 corporations. Why? You know, that should be going to developing our economic base. And then if you look at my platforms, I'm very progressive. Equality. Equality means equal. Everybody is equal. I think it's horrible that we have laws to protect small interest groups, because why do we have to protect small interest groups? We are all equal. And the idea that we have to do that is an indication that things are unfair. We need to make everything fair. Now, I'm not saying that we wipe out those laws by any means, because we need them, right? Women in the workforce, 80% for white, 60% for African American, I believe is 55% for Latino women, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have to have those laws because people would not do fair things. But the idea that the laws exist says that there's something morally wrong with our society, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely.
So people would say I'm very progressive in that way. I say government shouldn't be in our lives. And I challenge people who also agree with that statement, who may be very far right, of LGBT. Why are you so worried about who people are sleeping with?
Right.
You know, and why do you want to regulate that? Do you want government in your lives telling you about who you should be with and who you shouldn't? No, I don't. So that's a right stance on a very left stance. So where do I fall on the spectrum? I don't know. I just want people to vote for me and support me based on the stances and not where I pick myself. How's that?
That sounds great. That was a good answer. So, are there any issues proposed by Donald Trump and the current Republican majority that you could see yourself? Obviously, you can't obviously see yourself working with him on should you be elected.
No. Actual stances or what he said he would do. Because he did say about building the infrastructure, which I'm for,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think the very first thing you build, infrastructure, very first thing on the bill is your power grid. Why the power grid and not bridges? I am not saying bridges are unimportant, but we need to start the power grid now because we need alternative energy.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to start moving in this direction right now the power grid can't take fluctuations that the alternative energy gives. And there's all these kind of, oh my God, I can't remember what they're called at the moment, but there's all these surge protectors that protect against the surges. And if you get them off wrong, this is kind of a cyber attack, how cyber attacks work. They get them out of sync and then they blow up. I understand that. So we should start there. That will provide jobs. That will be for the future. That's for the environment. It's for, So I would agree with that. I would also agree, I don't like the trade deals. Trade deals are for corporations. They're not for the American worker. And what are we doing? Right? When we talk about globalization, the American worker, that's my cat. When we're talking about the American worker has to understand that we're in globalization, we're in a new world income, that the American worker can't be paid the way they were in the 50s, 60s, 70s, blah, 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 because they're competing with other countries. What they're saying is we're moving our companies in countries where we can have slave labor, where we have children working, where we are working people for 12 hours, where we are paying cents. And you, as the American worker, should just suck that up. And they use that also as a leverage in workforce insecurity as a way of bringing down wages. This started in '78 with Alan Greenspan. He gives a congressional report, and if you YouTube it, you can find the videos of this congressional testimony of talking about his economic success was built on workforce insecurity. Because workforce insecurity means I don't get paid fairly, I don't got the benefits I want, and I can't get a raise, but you know what, at least I have a job, and it's much better than, say, the other grocery store down the street, right? And this is a way of leveraging. And Alan Greenspan literally is bragging about this at Congress, that his economic success was based on economic insecurity. What also happened in the late 70s? They start attacking unions, busting unions, right? What does unions provide? Job security, income security, benefit security, right? All of this is manufactured. He's in the 90s, there's another video, and the 2000s, there's a video of him talking about actually, the last one I found this coincidentally doing research because I'm doing these articles on my experiences, the campaign, and my stances for daily costs. I call Fear of Living on a campaign, a congressional campaign. And at the last one he gives in the 2000s, he says, we are pushing workforce insecurity too far. Because if you push it too far and you get the inequality gap too much, people will start to get angry. And you get too many people angry at once, you're going to have a revolt. You're going to have social movements. The first ripple was 2010. That was the Tea Party. The second ripple was the far left. Occupy Wall Street. That's where I got. And then now we're seeing more and more social movements in different fashions, whether it's 415, Black Lives Matter, and who knows what's going to be, I guess you could call it a resistance kind of that, but it's all inequality, it's all unfair treatment, and all of this comes from all that same kind of source.
Right. It's interesting that you brought that up because me and my grandmother were just talking about that, and she was saying she doesn't understand why the Republicans want to do these tax cuts and benefit the rich so much, because every single civil war has been started off of the poor getting to a point that they're so poor that they revolt, like you said. So another hot topic.
Wait, can I add something about your grandmother?
Absolutely.
So Socrates writes in, it is Book 8 of the Republic, and he writes that when, he doesn't say it in these words, what he says is when the poor gets poorer and the rich get richer, and that disparity gets too much, that the poor will revolt, and that somebody who's basically a nobody from the poor will rise up. And it will happen every time. And he's writing it in a sense that that's a weakness of democracy, because everybody has a voice and stuff like that, and they will only take so much before the poor start to basically coalescing into a force. This is also talked about with James Madison. James Madison in the constitutional debates talks about this very specifically, and why the Constitution has to be written to protect the wealthy. He says, he calls it the opulent from the masses. And then James Smith, the father of economics, also talks about this in 1776. This is a recurring theme in our political system. Does that mean it's wrong? No. Does it mean it's right? No. It just means this is what happens when inequality gets too much. This is why a guy like me who's wearing a backcountry t-shirt could be rising like this and could be speaking out and could have people saying, you're right, because they are making the environment, the atmosphere in such a way that if you understand the system and you can speak out, you're articulate, and you have plans of what's the problem, how to fix the problem, you're going to get power. It's just the way democracy works.
Absolutely.
Anyways.
So the biggest, I won't say the biggest because there's a lot of other breaking news as you can see today. Should we repair the ACA, implement the American Health Act, or move to a single payer system?
Maybe single payer system.
Absolutely. Look, I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to be biased, but I'm like, absolutely, we need to move.
Here's another left issue that the right can agree with, right? If you're pro-business and things like that, the last thing you need a small business to be paying for is your workers' employment, right? Or, not employment. I'm sorry, you should be paying for your workers' employment. Medical care, right? Let's take that burden off the small businesses and the employees. Let's put it on the government. We're the worst industrial nation for health care, and we're the most expensive. We do have models, and we can borrow from many, many different industrialized countries for a model, refine it. We're Americans, we're smart, and we can make it flexible so we can keep adjusting it to make it better and better. We can make this work, and it absolutely should be a reality.
Absolutely. I am going to say I agree with you on that. That was an edited version of the interview with Tom. The remaining parts in the interview in whole will be released tomorrow on all the platforms, YouTube, iTunes, podcasts, so that you can see the entire discussion. I do not have enough time for this episode to put it into this episode and banter on about all the other things that I need to banter on to you about. However, I am going to take another quick break, and when I come back, I will conclude this week's episode with I've come to conclude. Ergo wants to be the platform for you to express your political thoughts. Please feel free to join the discussion via phone, video, or in person. To set up an interview, contact The Ergo Show at Outlook.com. I am a millennial, and while I too have enjoyed the temporary highs of partying, sex, sports, and entertainment, it is only temporary. I never voted, didn't care about politics, and I never paid attention to civics in high school. After all, nonchalance and being carefree was the thing to do. Indeed, it was the way to be. It was the way to survive in a world that was all about me. Let me tell you what having that type of mindset has done for me. It got me Donald Trump in a Republican majority Congress. It got me the possibility of 23 million people potentially losing their health care. It got me rising political party tensions and racial divides so violent it teeters on the brink of war. Now, I want to be very clear with you in the fact that I am in no way advocating for everyone to drop everything that they love about life and solely focus on politics and civics, but I'm imploring all people to put some time aside to pay attention. Beyonce's having twins. She's not thinking about your health care. The NBA isn't paying your bills. And the Real Housewives of Atlanta are not in Washington, D.C., making decisions on how much taxes they will take from you and how they will spend it. Being woke is a cute term for those interested in pop culture and those seeking attention. Being aware is for those that are well informed and depend more on action rather than criticizing and blaming. Take from that what you will, as this concludes this week's episode of Ergo, Before You, the People.
I'm pulling my weight.